Hi, Native Land Pod. Hi, Andrew. Hi, Tiffany. Hi, Angela. I love you guys. Thank you all so much. I just have one question. What is the goal of Project 2025? What are they wanting this country to look like? I read the book 1984 by George Orwell, and it's this dystopian America. It sounds like that's what they're going, but what are we suffering through? They want us to suffer. They want us to, ride this wave, but they're firing, 1 million federal workers. They are pulling back regulations. They're defunding and canceling, the education. And it's like, what is this country supposed to look like when you're all done and said, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer? But like, what is this world? What are we supposed to look like? What are we supposed to do? But thank you all for all that you do. Love you. Bye.
I love that.
That's
Make
right.
Orwell fiction again. Make Orwell fiction again. That is the mantra, honestly, that so many of us have been saying. Yeah.
Mofa.
Yeah. It is, it's really, it's scary to see what happened. And I love this question, speaking of special interests, because I think that is the special interest that had such a huge impact on the campaign, is having a huge impact on the country. I gotta say, to me, the goal of Project 2025 is Black folks. I think we are at the center of all of this policy, of all of this hatred. It is a concentrated effort.
I heard that wrong. I was like, wait a minute, what?
It's a concentrated effort to oppress and suppress.
Yes.
And it is making me revisit the entire conversation that can we even coexist here? I was recently having this conversation about, when President Abraham Lincoln said we should get rid of the Black folks. Like, we cannot coexist with them. And I have to say, I think he may have had a point, because he essentially said they will never forgive us for enslaving them. And white people will never want the stain of slavery around them. So let's give them some money and ship them out of America. And you look at us hundreds of years later, and I think it has always been a bitter battle in this country, because we are the keepers of America's memory. And so this anti-Black discrimination has a wide impact and cast a dark shadow across so many areas of our politics. And they were able to convince other people to hate Black folks too. And there were certain people who are now considered white, but they didn't have white. The Italians weren't considered white for a while, and then they got white privilege. And the fastest way to get that is to hop on hating Black folks. So I think we are at the center of all of this discord, to be honest with you.
When I heard this question, one, thank you for the brilliant question. We do love you too. We started the show with Malcolm X, a prophet in his own time, talking about that they will change what is happening to say that the people who are the recorders and documenters of accurate history, are not ahistorical, are not revisionist history tellers, will be made to seem like they are the actual haters. Mm-hmm. And I think that accountability is not hate, even though it's uncomfortable. And, when I think about the question, because we did a whole podcast on Project 2025, what is it? What is its origins? Thank you to all of you who've watched it. It's one of our biggest shows.
Please visit it again.
Please visit it, especially for the underpinnings of Project 2025 to the point of the question. But I think the fundamental question here is, what do they want the country to look like? What does the country they imagine include us? Does it include brown people? Does it include the actual founders of this space? People from Indian country? Or does it exclude everyone because they think white is right? Do they think Make America Great Again? I remember they did this poll around the 2016 election about what was the era, right, that you want to get back to that demonstrates when America was at its greatest. And these motherfuckers went to the 50s.
Yeah.
They went to the pre-civil rights era. And what I got to tell you guys, and I don't want to disrespect our predecessors at all, but I think that we almost in 1950 right now in 2025. It feels like they rolled back all of these rights. I'm not going to say his name, but I had a really interesting conversation with a thought leader among us right now who said, what I think we have to pay attention to is we spent all this time focusing on civil rights advancements, our voting rights, affordable housing, fair housing access, equal opportunity in employment and education. And they were able to roll that back in less than 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were to examine where we put our focus, to the same point that Congressman Rangel raised upon his retirement from Congress in a CBC meeting, he said, have we spent too much time focusing on social policy and not enough on economic policy? The reason they are able to advance in these ways at our expense is because they can afford it.
Andrew, Angela raised a really good question.
Yeah.
I'm curious your thoughts. Have we spent too much time advancing social policy and not economic? That was Mr. Rangel's.
That's what it was a conundrum. You could see the pain on his face. And Mr. Rangel and I didn't agree on every single thing, but he's a CBC founder. He was a part of the group that sent the 61 recommendations to Richard Nixon. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them focus on social policy. Even the way that we approached housing access was about what was fair and just.
Yeah.
And not about giving us the resources to afford to be where they are.
Right.
Or even to be where we are.
Because it didn't matter how much. It didn't matter how much we had.
But that's
a
the
good
thing.
point.
And right now, it doesn't matter how much. Because they are able to lock us out of all of our progress. And it's a damn shame. You know, that's why I'm saying I'm not trying to disrespect our forebears, but I do think we got to wrestle with this, because as we prepare for a fight and as we lean into what it means to persist, resist, and oppose, what is the right lane? Do we go right back to protecting voting rights and civil rights and all this? Or do we go into fighting for our own space, our own dollars, our own access, our own communities so they can't take it away? I don't know.
Well, but I want to hear from you, Andrew. As I toss to you, I want to say we did that. So when we carved out a little tiny space for ourselves in the Greenwood district of Tulsa, they weren't bothering anybody. These were people who were just living their life. And they found it and killed us. The U.S. government, they bombed the shit out of us. You know, they came in and murdered men, women, children. It was state-sanctioned murder and violence. So there is something inherent.
It wasn't just Tulsa. That's true.
Right. That was not the anomaly. That was the norm. Because years prior to that, the Red Summer of 1919, it was rampant violence across this country aimed at Black people, Black communities. So, Andrew, I don't know that I don't know that it can be one or the other, or should we be fighting for both? Or does this even system of capitalism ever serve us?
I mean, with due respect to the congressman, I actually don't believe that the fight has been social exclusive. I actually think the values that brought us to the fight may feel social, racial, and gender parity so that we can compete. But compete for what? To compete for jobs. To compete for schools that would educate our children and make them qualified for the positions that paid higher wages. We fought for fair housing so that when folks went out and worked a full-time plus days of work, that they could then invest in this economy by affording to live where it is that they work. When our foreparents fought for much of the social safety net, I would argue practically all of it is economic in nature. So I actually believe that while our fight has been informed by our consciousness around fairness and ending discrimination, it has all been toward the end goal of being able to earn a wage that you can live on, take care of yourself and your family, and have a vacation every once in a while. So that's just my slight exception, and folks may land on different sides of that. And then to the question around Project 2025, I'll say two things. One, I think part of its goal was to turn what we right now associate as a democracy with three branches of government helmed by an executive branch. They would like to create what they discuss as the administrative, they want to get rid of what they call the administrative state, and which is all these agencies running things. And they want to create the unitary executive, all powerful, all being, exempt from criminal prosecutions, who can make decisions unilaterally to shut departments, to decide whether to enforce laws, so on and so forth. So they argue a very different picture of what democracy looks like than I think how most of us conceive of it. But I would argue that their belief is probably closer to where the framers were. Remember, the framers didn't give everybody the right to vote, not even all white people. It gave all white property owning men the right to vote. They did not believe largely in direct democracy in the sense that you vote for the person and whoever votes the most for that person wins. No, they thought that the emotions of the people, the emotions of the general public needed to be muted, or at least the edge taken off by a more sophisticated, smarter, intelligent, richer group of white men who could then calm the passions of the people. So they
You're
have
literally
a different
describing what's
view.
happening today. This is wild.
But that's because that's exactly what they believe, and it's been the belief since the very beginning. And then the second part of the response on Project 2025 is to say they hold. I think your point, Tiffany, was right that Black people, but I would argue that it's been Black people in eliminating us as a productive part of this society by virtue of what conditions exist that allow our uplift in the first place. What do I mean? I believe that they are intent on destroying the entirety of the social safety net. Social Security, they were not for it when it was proposed. It happened because there was a Democratic president and a super majority Democratic Senate. When we think about retirement benefits, they don't support that. When we think about Medicaid, Medicare, they believe in this mythology of the survival of the fittest, that whoever survives were the ones who were fit and meant to survive. Donald Trump told us that in the first administration. He said the people who are affected mostly by COVID are folks who are already sick, are older, or are the Black people. They said that.
Yeah.
He said it from the White House, right? So I think where they want to go is back to a time where if you had means and wealth, name and privilege, this country was for you. And anyone who didn't have that in their possession, you fell by the wayside. Oh, you can't afford retirement? Fine, you sleep on the streets. Oh, you can't afford to get health care? Then die. Yeah. I don't mean to be dismissive in any way or cute by one half. This is their vision of the country, and through Project 2025 and the dismantling of all of this, they are well on their way to trying to achieve the kind of country that they believe should have existed in the first place.
Well, that gets to this question of special interest, though. Angela, you were looking into special interest when it comes to members of Congress, and I to Andrew's point, that is something that is not talked about. I keep saying it every podcast. I'm not going to stop this podcast. It is such a gross failure of American media and journalism that we don't talk more about that and highlight who is funding some of these members, because Project 2025 was funded. It came out of the Heritage Foundation, but there are people funding it. This presidency is funded by a sole immigrant, for the record, not an American citizen, who bought the presidency for this man. He's funding a lot of pieces. He's defunding the government while funding his own special projects through the government. And members of Congress are
funding him.
Right. And the government funding him. And members of Congress are standing by watching this happen amidst, some of these angry town halls. Why on earth would that be? And as you talk to us, Angela, I think it's also important to explain the laws around this, because this was a big part of Citizens United. There used to be caps on how much you could contribute to a member of Congress, and individually, what I think it's $2,500. Do I have that wrong?
Per yes, but it's a 5,000 max. What'd you say?
No. The numbers may change, but you're right. There is a cap.
So as an individual, I can only give 5,000 total to any candidate.
There's a thing per
cycle.
Reporting. Yeah, per cycle.
Yes, per cycle.
For a primary and
primary. 2,500.
You know what? Let me look, because I'm trying. Okay. I was trying to look up something. I actually don't want to go down this road because I have a lot on the special interest piece. But I want to since it was brought up, I'm going to get the facts right.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's 5,000 for a PAC, and it's different for individual.
I bring that up.
Yeah, 5,000. But what's the individual federal contracting contribution limit? Federal contract.
So 3,300 per
primary
election.
And then general. Yeah.
Okay.
Per individual. And a PAC can do 5,000 in a primary and 5,000 in a general for a total of 10.
But it's unlimited for us.
That's different. That's an independent expenditure, which brings us back to Citizens United. Carry on.
Yes. So super PAC. I don't know if y'all could hear our producer Lolo off camera was giving us some good info. $3,300 for an individual during a cycle, $5,000 for a political action committee. And when, the Citizens United ruling, I mean, it essentially changed campaign financing. And that is a huge challenge in this country. That is a debate for another time. But I wanted to at least introduce that so we could understand why some of these people, why you have private interests controlling how our government functions.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeart Radio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeart Radio, visit the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.